Imagine making beats in the middle of the bayou and you need some vocals to finish off your track. So you hop on your laptop and collaborate in real time with a vocalist in New Jersey. Today, I'm chatting with the CEO of Dawn Audio, a startup that's making this a reality. I'm Tom, and this is Sequence, the show where you can learn about the latest music tech startups through the music that inspired them. Let's go. Well, today I'm joined by Diego Pinzon. He's the CEO and co-founder at Dawn Audio. Nice to have you, Diego.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
So kind of starting from the tool itself, I'll give you kind of like my clumsy description of what it is, and you can probably do a much better job. So basically it allows producers and musicians to collaborate on tracks in real time, regardless of the digital audio workstation they're using. So I could have Logic and you could have like FL Studio, and we could be collaborating in real time, creating a track.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Really wanted to kind of from the foot set out and make something that didn't force creators to have to change their workflow just to collaborate. We try to really stay as out of the way as possible and keep you working however you're most comfortable.
Got it. So that's kind of like the tool piece, but also I noticed it's not just a cool name, Dawn, DAWN, which stands for network.
Yep.
Can you tell us like the bigger kind of mission or the bigger piece behind what you're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because this really started purely as a desire for the tool. I had, a friend up in New Jersey who I'd be sitting 5 feet away from, and we still couldn't make music together because literally I was using Logic and he was using FL. But the larger vision, to your point, really is around that network and what the tool can enable. I always say, I played a lot of Xbox growing up. For me, that became a space where it didn't matter if I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that if I had 30 minutes of free time, I could log on and someone would be online. There'd be some game to play, do something. We want to make that for music. So, if you have 30 minutes free time on a Saturday, you can log on. There's a network behind it. You can meet a new collaborator, challenges, competitions, kind of really gamify music creation, but all fueled by that technology that's been what really kind of is holding that side of music back.
Got it. So kind of like a lobby for musicians just to kind of jump in and say, hey, I want to create something today. Who else is around at the same time? And you can just kind of get cooking on something.
Yeah, exactly. We're calling it like a live creation network, kind of that social community aspect, but centering, the actual music creation aspect.
Nice. Yeah, it's good to hear that kind of bigger purpose behind it, because definitely the real-time collaboration thing is a big challenge to solve, but expanding it to that network to kind of get more people in, it kind of becomes bigger than just like the tool that's, like you say, centering music in a community.
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of have a big focus on helping kind of bridge the market between aspiring professionals and professionals. And so definitely feel like a lot of big name artists and professionals would love to be able to give back to their fans, to their supporters. But obviously today it's like that means either traveling somewhere, having an in-person meet, or using technology that's super limited. And so, the hope is that this will be a tool that not only is helpful for those established professionals, kind of streamlining their workflow, but also the people that are just stepping into the industry, being able to tap into that network and kind of really learn and grow much quicker.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. So with that, I'm sure we're going to explore a few more of those themes across these different tracks. The opener here, kind of a personal one. I'll say definitely literally personal because performing in this track. So we have Viejo, Amor by Gabriel, and this is you with your uncle and your father, and this is kind of a performance for your grandmother's birthday, right? Yeah. So take us through why this is significant to you.
Yeah, so it's funny, I don't think I realized this growing up, but I think a huge part of the reason, so I played drums my whole life, got into music production while in undergrad, and a huge part of the reason why I got into music, absolutely, I think is because of my dad. Music for me has always been something that I love doing, but I never wanted to be my main career path. And my dad was like the type of person that every weekend, every time he was working from home and in between meetings, like anytime he had 5 minutes of free time, he would just pick up his guitar and just start playing something. And so music was always kind of, in the living room playing when I was growing up. That's definitely what got me into my music playing. And I was realizing it's not even just my own music creation, but even how I approach music as being this hobby, passion kind of thing that I'm doing purely because honestly, it's like therapeutic, it's healing, like all these things that I feel like that's exactly how my dad approaches music. Like he never, cared to be a professional touring musician or at least not that I know of. Music is always something that in my family has been a way for us to kind of come together, but never was this thing of, oh, well, cool, but how many streams are you getting, or you have a big following, a big audience? So that specific song is just one that kind of definitely heard a lot growing up. I know my dad, I think, was the one that picked it that year. That I don't remember which birthday it was for my grandma, but I know that we wanted to record something. And so, I figured just that it impacted a lot of my own music journey there.
So I guess that kind of DNA almost of like the music as a coming together or like a social activity that is reflected in the wider Dawn community aspect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, we say with Dawn, like that really as an industry, I think we've shifted a lot to only valuing music as like that finished product, final song, and not as that creative process that is what brings people together, that is what lets people explore their self-expressions, their passions, all these things. That honestly, I think even as I'm saying that, I'm realizing like the reason I picked that video is I think that's one of the only videos that I have of us playing. Because again, for us, it's less about like, oh, we're playing this, now let's record it so we can do something with the product. It's more like, no, we're playing it because the act of playing it, the act of coming together, like that's what's enjoyable. And absolutely, I think that's core to Dawn's DNA is that live creation aspect and the process of it, less so. Obviously, again, musicians got to get paid. We're all for that. But really recentering in the creative process that is music.
Super interesting, because when I was listening to the track, it kind of got me thinking about like the different levels or types of collaboration that can happen, right? So like, as you know, just like collaboration full stop creates new things that you probably couldn't do on your own. But also like it got me thinking, like if scientists are listening to this, like this is going to be completely off base, but like there's a TEDx talk by someone called Dr. David Greenberg, and he's talking about the social aspects of music, and it basically can change the hormonal composition of your brain. If you get a group of people like chanting or playing music together, I think like cortisol goes down, so like stress goes down, and like dopamine goes up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Again, not sure if that's the exact thing, but basically that kind of live music setting syncs people up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny as you say. So I definitely always love to geek out kind of on the science side of music. I'd studied psychology for a little bit. But even like I do some more organizing work, like community organizing, and there's another organizer here in New Orleans that I've been meaning to connect with for a while, but they do these things called community sings, which is literally like bringing people physically together. And it's not like, professional vocalists. It's like everyone and anyone from the community, but it really serves as kind of healing space because I think, as you're saying, like when people come together, even if you have zero talent or skill or training or any of these things, like if you can kind of feed into that just energy that's socially and communally there, that music kind of creates, I think, it's a really great experience.
Nice. Well, keeping on that theme, we're kind of looking not just like coming together in one place at one time, but almost like people coming together across time. And so what I mean by that is the next one we have up is Wildflower by Hank Crawford from 1973. And like from that opening phrase, hip hop heads especially will kind of recognize, wait a minute, I know this track.
Yeah.
I think it's been sampled at least like 43 different times.
Right.
From like Kanye to J. Cole, Drake, Tupac, you name it. So tell us why you picked this particular track.
Yeah, so I played drums growing up, got into music production, and I think because of that, my preferred form of producing is sampling. It's very rhythmic, very drummer kind of mindset. And that track, actually, I'm working on a song with an artist here in New Orleans. But I produced the track and it samples that record. And for me, like as I think I mentioned, like one of the things that kickstarted Dawn was this frustration of literally being like 5 feet away from my friend and not being able to make music because I didn't want to learn his DAW and he didn't want to learn mine. And so that workflow element, like even if I'm going to other people's like studios, or I now use Ableton, and like even if they're using Ableton or they're on a Mac, like there's something about being in somebody else's environment, using somebody else's tools that throws you off a little bit. It just kind of like forces you to have to take an extra moment to think before everything that you're doing. And for me, like when I'm in my studio on my DAW, I have like an Ableton push. Like when I have my flow, I feel like I can crank stuff out like 5 minutes and I already have something going. Whereas sometimes it's like I'll be at someone else's studio, someone else's environment, and it's that total like, oh, I'm like a deer in headlights right now. Like I feel like I'm just completely out of my element. For me, that piece really centered that aspect of like, it's probably one of the like my favorite tracks I've produced, the one that samples that. But that element of really being able to kind of tap into your personal flow and kind of work from there.
It's kind of interesting because we kind of kicked off talking about collaboration as like a means to create something new or something different, but also you kind of have this familiarity aspect of like your own tools, your own studio. So I guess what we're saying is like Dawn is almost like the best of both worlds. You can use your own stuff, use your own flow. You don't have to like learn Pro Tools or like figure out where the compressor is on this particular DAW, all that kind of stuff, right? But also you kind of still introducing that novelty. You're not like airdropping files with the guy sat next to you kind of thing.
Right.
You're actually doing it in real time. How does that like hybrid real time collaboration, but also the familiarity, like how does that play out within the product?
Yeah, so we'll get a lot of times like when we first explain it to people, everyone in their head really thinks like, oh, cool. Well, it must be that we're all working off of like the same project. And for us, it was clear that because we knew that we wanted to set out to create not just another tool for people to have to learn, but really something that like at its core were those two elements, the collaboration and the obviously kind of not breaking up the workflow, not having to email, audio airdrop, like all of these things. But secondly was that being able to keep you in that familiar environment. And so there's been certain things that like even like with the current version of the app, it works kind of more audio focused. It's a little less visual focused. And so, I might have my Ableton session. Let's say you had a Pro Tools session or something, like I'm not getting your actual Pro Tools files and vice versa. That's been kind of by design. Like that's what allows us to work cross-DAW and live. But it is interesting sometimes talking to folks because I think that the first perception is like, oh, it must be that we're like, merging these or you're converting these files into a common format and all of these things. And I think really once people see it and kind of really understand, like, again, our goal is to be as out of the way as possible. And so you really end up running a session almost without even realizing that you're like collaborating with someone or because you're fully immersed kind of in your environment. For you, it's like you said, you're not having to figure out, oh, if I'm collaborating with someone in FL, like where is their compressor or how does their EQ work? I'm really just working in Ableton.
Got it. So dumb question that came out of that while you were speaking. So does it actually create two different projects? Like, so can I write to yours and you write to mine and actually we can kind of be collaborating across different projects? Yeah.
So there is an element of being able to kind of record into each other's DAW. That would really mainly happen if, let's say, like you were running a Pro Tools session. What's cool is that because we're never really having to transfer export, I can maintain my full like FX chain and you can maintain yours. For example, like I was working with a vocalist where like I was engineering the session. They were recording out of their studio. They were using FL and they were able to record their vocals into my DAW, but with their full effects. So I didn't own Auto-Tune at the time. And so they had set up their vocal chain like how they normally set it up. They're recording it. But at the end of the day, because I was the one engineering it, I was getting the vocals on my end so that I could then kind of mix it easier after. So yeah, it kind of lends itself to a couple of different workflows. That's really where we're at right now, is trying to have as many different creators using it, kind of giving feedback so we can kind of really see how to optimize for, because everyone works completely differently. And so really trying to optimize for those different workflows.
That's cool. So I guess it has flexibility. You could like almost use it like as a scratch pad or like, hey, how about if you did this? And like I send some MIDI across, you send it back and there's like a main session, so to speak. That's really cool.
Yeah, or even, I think like you said, like it's really cool for getting ideas down quickly. Or even if it's like not multiple sessions, but it's just one session. But we've had a lot of engineers want to use it with their clients to be able to, like while they're mixing, get feedback and not have to, like, oh, here's version 15 and actually can you tweak, this volume at 2 minutes and 30, like that whole process. And then the last thing I'll say there is like, even, to this point about the workflow, like, I think a lot of times too, when we'll talk about Dawn, people will think, oh, cool. It's a great tool if you're not in the same room. But even if you were in the same room and using the same DAW, like at most, it's kind of one person at the computer at a time. Whereas with our app, it really kind of makes this like multiplayer environment where all of us can simultaneously be making these edits, making changes, contributing. It's less like I'm looking over your shoulder waiting for you to, finish so I can hop on.
Hey, you pan that a little bit to the left. And yeah, right. That's cool. Just a final note on that track. The sax tone on that record is so smooth.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's the most beautiful sax I've ever heard.
Yeah, no, and I think, like you said, I think that's probably the most standout-ish. Like I'm sure most people, if they hear the beginning, might be like, oh, this sounds familiar. And then the sax comes in and they're like, oh, wait, I know exactly what this is.
Also arranged by Bob James. I didn't know before. And I was okay. So like this, like, sample king, I guess, in a way, unintentionally arranged it. And I could kind of see a bit of his blueprint on that too. So that was kind of a cool.
Yeah, wait, I didn't even realize that. I'll have to look more into that.
Yeah. So actually, this next one is actually kind of wild in a good way. So this is Wells Fargo by Dreamville. This came out of like an intense 10-day artist camp, like a label camp, but with a twist that invited a bunch of like outside producers and other artists in to collaborate. And that's like captured in the documentary Revenge of the Dreamers.
Yeah.
Which is like awesome. So I'd recommend anyone take a look at that. Tell us why you put this one in and what significance it has to you.
Yeah, I was really trying to figure out, I knew I wanted a song from this project. So I'm a huge Dreamville fan, huge fan of like kind of that whole scene. I remember when they were recording that album, like it became this whole industry event where they sent out these like almost golden ticket, kind of Willy Wonka chocolate factory thing, where like artists were getting this invitation to this exclusive camp and people were then like sharing it and saying like, oh, I got invited. I think there was like a Complex interview where one of them would describe it as like an artist Disneyland, where it was just like this recording studio. They had a bunch of different rooms. There wasn't too much of a set intention other than we're going to make an album in a short time frame. And so like from watching the documentary and seeing interviews, like it became this thing where people were like, oh, I'd be in the kitchen, like making a bowl of cereal and suddenly hear down the hall, like someone working on a track that was going crazy and just be like, oh, let me hop in, see what I can add, maybe lay down a verse and then pop out, see what's going on in the other room. And so it just became this very like free flowing, clear example of like what happens when you can bring creators together and create an environment where they're just pumping out kind of content or tracks and making music. And I knew, like I said, that I wanted to pick a track from that album. That specific track, I think in the documentary like highlights, because I think it was literally like that type of thing where like someone was playing a track by chance and someone like hopped in and was like, wait, this is crazy. They started laying something down. Then like, I think Buddy popped in, like, Earth Game. Like it just became this like very quickly kind of bigger session out of like, I think someone just kind of happened to be playing a beat or something. And yeah, for us really like in that larger vision, that like, network piece of it, like we really would love to create that experience, but online where people can just be kind of like, ideally, I don't know, on a weekend, we could do like a little camp or something and people are just hopping session to session, really quickly being able to contribute, lay down tracks, pop into the next thing, kind of just like creativity at its peak of just like free flowing, no barriers, no limitations, kind of working from there.
That is cool as hell. I can imagine you could like put out like a challenge. Hey, we're trying to record an album in the next 3 days. Like who wants to jump in on this? So I assume this was kind of why you picked this, like just the energy and the collaboration. Like this is like almost the ultimate version of collaboration. You just like getting everyone in the same place, pressure cooking, like Cole or something like that was saying like people are getting competitive, like people are trying to like one up each other. And I think I've got it written down, 124 songs came out of this.
Yeah, right.
And like this particular track I think was like on the last day. You just got like a group of people collaborating together. It kind of got me thinking again about this idea of an environment, a place where creativity can come out, like the Dungeon of the Atlanta rap scene or Abbey Road Studios, these kind of hallowed grounds of creativity. How do you think that's kind of different, or what is the experience for you like within Dawn and this kind of remote / hybrid collaboration? What's your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely feel like environment plays a huge role. Like I think even the studio they recorded that at, I think was like Treetop or Tree Sound or something like that. I know even talking to engineers, like I think a big part of your role as like the recording engineer in the session or the engineer running the session is like making that environment as comfortable and as suitable for people to just be like pumping out ideas. That's kind of at the core of what we're trying to do is like, if I'm most comfortable in my bedroom. Or sometimes, like, honestly, I love going out to, like, I live right by the bayou. It's like a nice place to just kind of sit by. Like, I love going with, I also have the Machine Micro, like very portable drum pad. Love going, just sitting out there. And like, I've been saying to my friend, I'm like, yo, we got to just do like a session on Dawn one of the days I'm out there. And so really kind of removing that constraint from having to be in a certain physical location. Obviously, I think there's still a ton of merit to, those kind of more classic studios that have spent a ton of time, energy, like intentionality crafting a space like that. By all means, if you have access to that, go and tap into that. But also, I know even tapping into like some different online communities of creators and producers, like there's a ton of creators that are like, oh, I would love to, be more serious about my music, but I live in like the middle of Oklahoma where there's like 2 people that make music. And I'm like, yeah, okay, so you don't have access to these studios, but it would be great for you to still be able to tap in, plug into a session where someone that is, in whatever other environment can also be simultaneously kind of collaborating, kind of removing that barrier. And so less so trying to like replace in-person collaboration and more remove some of the barriers that do exist when, for example, that can happen, or again, even like in-person sessions. We actually just in August ran a producer camp where we had some creators here in New Orleans, we had some creators up in New Jersey, and we had them collaborating kind of across states for a couple of hours. And so we had all the creators here in New Orleans go to a single recording studio just because it was easy to kind of manage that way. But we were still able to enhance that by having, a producer in New Jersey be the one that was collaborating with them.
The concept of replacing things comes up a lot when actually it's just an alternative option. And like you say, for that person in Oklahoma with like one other person like 50 miles away,
right,
they're not going to Abbey Road, they're not getting invites to camps and stuff. So I think it increases access for different people, and I think the result as well maybe will be slightly different than like a intensive in person, but it's still different than if you just kind of were on your own, or even just like sending stuff back and forth. So I think it like does capture that spirit. Kind of got me thinking of like one of my favorite albums, which is Champion Sound by J-Lib, which was a J Dilla Madlib collaboration back in 2003.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, when I first heard about how it was done, so I assumed they were kind of in the studio together making stuff, but like I think they were just sending tapes back and forth between LA and Detroit over time, and just like in my head, and this is how I imagined it, like you get a little jiffy bag,
right?
Oh, J Dilla sent me a beat, and then like you probably have days to kind of think about it. So it's like a different type of flow, but it still can result in like incredible music. So yeah, I don't think it's about replacing stuff necessarily.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big kind of key to it, is like however it is that is your preferred format, workflow, like way to make music, like that's how you should be able to show up to the table. And yeah, we're just kind of trying to help facilitate that.
Well, that's cool. And it's been great talking through all this and kind of the different levels of collaboration and different types of workflow that you can get through Dawn. And like I like the idea of the Bayou, the Bayou cookup.
Yeah.
So I think as of recording right now, you're on closed beta waitlist stage. Where can people go to sign up?
Yeah. So we just spent the last month and a half, 2 months or so, kind of invite only testing what we're calling version 3 of our app. The biggest changes, it comes with a plugin. There's a kind of workflow now where creators can record with actually 0 latency. So even though you are remote, kind of that fully immersed experience, you're staying in your DAW. If you Google Dawn Audio, it should come up, but our website is site.dawn-audio.com. That's where you'll see the most up-to-date info on the rollout. We are working on a little trial of this kind of the larger vision, the network piece, kind of launching something that is leaning on some kind of gamification and makes kind of music collaboration and growing your skills as a producer kind of a fun thing that's fueled by that network, but that still allows you to kind of, because we're able to leverage Dawn, kind of show up without having to learn a whole new tool. That will probably have announcements coming out in the coming weeks from today, but all of that can be found on our website or on our Instagram at dawn.audio.
Got it. Go check it out.
Yeah.